4 days ago at 2:47 a.m. Tehran time, over 200 Israeli warplanes crossed into Iranian airspace and changed the world as we know it forever. In what Israel called Operation Rising Lion, they struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weapons program and the Revolutionary Guards headquarters in Tehran. By dawn, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini was promising crushing retaliation. But by nightfall, over 150 Iranian missiles were screaming towards Israeli cities in Operation True Promise 3. The world watched in horror as two longtime adversaries finally shared the pretense of shadow warfare and went at each other's throats directly. At least 80 people dead in Iran and 10 confirmed dead in Israel. Nuclear talks suspended, oil prices spiking. But here's what mainstream media won't tell you. Africa's future hangs in the balance of this Middle Eastern bloodshed. Because this isn't just about Israel and Iran. This is about the triangle of resistance. Iran, Russia, and China that has become Africa's lifeline away from Western dominance. And right now, one corner of that triangle is under direct assault. How did we get here? And what does it mean for 1.5 billion Africans whose governments are watching every missile strike with growing alarm? Stay with me as we unpack the significance of this conflict on Africa's sovereignty. While Western media focused on casualty counts and military analysis, something remarkable happened in Africa. The African Union didn't equivocate. They didn't call for restraint from all sides. They called Israel's strikes where they were, a violation of Iranian sovereignty. According to AU chairperson Ali Modu Yusuf, these actions are a grave threat to international peace. We demand an immediate cessation of all hostilities. But it was South Africa that dropped the diplomatic niceties entirely. The Department of International Relations issued a statement that will make Western capitals squirm. Let us be clear, there is no such thing as a preemptive self-defense under the UN Charter. Israel's actions are a flagrant violation of international law. Full stop. Think about that. While Washington continues to echo Israel's right to defend itself, Pretoria was citing chapters and verses of international law. While London spoke of concerns, Cape Town was talking about sovereignty. This wasn't an accident. This was Africa asserting its independence in a multipolar world, a world where the old rules of Western dominance can no longer apply. But why does South Africa care so much about Iran? The answer lies in a triangle that has quietly reshaped global power. Now, let me make this clear at this point. This is my opinion and should not be taken as a statement of fact. Since Russia moved on Georgia in 2008, since China became the world's factory, since Iran survived decades of sanctions, something unprecedented has emerged, the triangle of resistance. That is what I call it. Three powers that refuse to bow to Western hegemony. Three economies that offer Africa alternatives to the Western consensus. The numbers don't lie. China is Africa's largest trading partner for the 16 consecutive years. $295.6 billion in trade for 2024. That's more than the US and European Union combined. Russia has military cooperation agreement with over 40 African countries, providing weapons, training, and security assistance that comes without lectures on human rights. And Iran represents something even more strategic. Proof that a global South nation can survive superpower pressure and maintain its sovereignty. Tehran has quietly built partnerships across Africa. Kenya is Iran's second largest trading partner on the continent after South Africa. Iranian technology, Iranian expertise, Iranian willingness to share advanced capabilities without strings attached. But here is the thing about triangles. They are only as strong as their weakest corner. And right now, Israel's F-35s are trying to snap that weakest corner in half. If Iran falls, what happens to the multipolar world that has given Africa its greater leverage in the last 500 years? Think about that. African leaders watching Tehran burn aren't just thinking about geopolitics. They are remembering Libya. March 19, 2011, NATO launched a humanitarian intervention to protect civilians. But by October, Muammar Gaddafi was dead and Libya was destroyed. The African Union had opposed military intervention. They had a roadmap for a negotiated settlement. 5 African presidents from South Africa, Mauritania, Mali, Congo-Brazzaville, and Uganda had been working to mediate. The West ignored them completely. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni said it clearly. The attack on Libya was a mistake we should never have allowed. Africa had the power to intervene militarily if necessary, and we should have taught them a lesson they would not forget. Look what that humanitarian intervention accomplished. State collapse, a refugee crisis, armed groups spreading across the Sahel. France and Britain got their oil contracts. Africa got chaos and instability that persists to this day. Iraq, 2003. African nations opposed the invasion. They warned about regional consequences. They were ignored. 20 years later, the Middle East is still boiling. Every African diplomat watching Israeli bomb fall on Iran is asking the same question. Are we watching Libya all over again? Another strong global South leader removed. Another alternative to Western power eliminated. Another lesson that resistance is futile, but this time, the stakes are infinitely higher. Here's what Western media won't tell you about this conflict. We are living through the greatest economic power shift in the last 500 years. The global north that once controlled everything is losing its grip. The numbers are staggering. BRICS now controls 35.7% of global GDP. The G7 down to just 29%, the lowest in the last 30 years. The global south accounts for 85% of the world's population and is projected to drive the global growth for the next decade. China just announced it's eliminating tariff on import from most African countries. Russia is delivering weapons to African nations to strengthen their sovereignty. Iran is sharing technology that the West typically hoards. Ethiopia and Egypt joined BRICS this year. Kenya's President Ruto wants in. Algeria, Nigeria, Zimbabwe are all expressing interest. As Kenya investment banker Ali Khan put it, for Africa, the goal is clear. Dilute the power of the IMF and the World Bank and finally break free from the dollar stranglehold. The triangle of resistance isn't just about military cooperation. It's about economic liberation. It's about African nations having choices for the first time since independence. But what happens to those choices if one corner of that triangle crumbles under Israeli fire? You want to see the triangle of resistance in action? Look at the Sahel. Mali kicked out French troops and invited Russian military support. Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traoré told France to take their military bases out and leave. Niger terminated its military agreement with the United States and embraced a Russian partnership. These aren't random decisions. These are calculated moves by African governments that finally have alternatives. Russian security assistance without lectures. Chinese infrastructure investment without structural adjustment programs. Iranian technology transfer without intellectual property restrictions. Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traoré put it this way: the era of others choosing our partners is over. From now on, the people of Burkina Faso and only the people of Burkina Faso will decide who help us build our future. But here is the terrifying calculation keeping African leaders awake at night. All of this depends on the triangle holding. If Iran's nuclear program is destroyed, if the regime in Tehran collapses, if one leg of the triangle snaps, suddenly Africa's alternatives start disappearing. Suddenly, the West has fewer competitors for African resources. Suddenly, the leverage that allowed Burkina Faso to expel French troops evaporates. Suddenly, it's back to the old rules. Take Western aid with Western conditions or get nothing at all. This is why African leaders are watching every Israeli airstrike with growing alarm. As we speak, Iranian missiles are still falling on Israeli cities. Israeli jets are still pounding Iranian infrastructure. The world stands on the precipice of a regional war that could spiral into something unimaginable. But for Africa, this moment represents something even larger, a choice between two futures. Future one, Iran's resistance collapses. The triangle of resistance crumbles. The multipolar war that has given African nations unprecedented leverage disappears. Western hegemony reasserts itself, and African countries go back to choosing between competing brands of dependency. Future 2, Iran survives. The triangle holds. The multipolar world continues to develop, giving African nations the space to chart their own course. The global south continues its economic rise, creating real alternative to Western-dominated institutions. South Africa's statement wasn't just diplomatic rhetoric. It was a recognition of the stakes. As one of their senior diplomats put it, every missile fire threatens not just regional peace, but the global balance that allows nations like ours to breathe. We urge all parties to step back from the brink, not just for their sake, but for all of ours. The missiles flying between Tehran and Tel Aviv aren't just about nuclear weapons program or Israeli security. They are about whether the global south will continue to have choices or whether we will return to a world where Washington and London dictate terms to everyone else. Africa didn't choose a side in this war, but this war will choose Africa's future. In every explosion over Tehran, in every siren wailing over Tel Aviv, 1.5 billion Africans can hear the sound of their options either contracting or expanding. In every war, truth is the first casualty. But in this one, African sovereignty may be the second. The confrontation continues. Africa watches, and the triangle of resistance endures for now. This is Frontline Africa. If you believe these are the stories that need to be told, truth unfiltered, power reframed from an African lens, then join the conversation. Subscribe and share, and let us know what you think. I am Ezekiel Enejeta. See you in the next one.